So, good news, everyone. If you're trying to upload documents to a SharePoint Document Library from your Power App and you've watched a few videos online and some of them have been around for a while and some of them are fairly recent solutions, and you're kind of struggling with some of the concepts because it's something that you would expect to be fairly easy to do. You want to be able to attach files to a Power App, and you want those files to be stored in SharePoint somewhere. But for some reason, this isn't really an easy thing to do in Power Apps. Not easy until now. Microsoft have thankfully made this process so much easier with a new action in Power Automate that we can leverage to make it really simple to upload documents to a SharePoint document library. So we're not messing around with file attachments inside of a list. We don't have to worry about saving our documents after we've saved our records, sort of like clicking on save and then having to go back. We can just do it all at once. It just works way better now. Make sure you watch this video all the way to the end to find out how we do this. And also, on top of that, at the end, we'll have a little bit of a chat about how we can even expand on this further and build upon this concept of saving files to a document library and how we can make it even better still. But today I'm going to give you the absolute basics. I'm going to give you more than enough that you can take away and put this into your own application. Let's get started. And as you can see on the screen here, I've just got a really simple Power App already ready to go. This is an issues application that used to store issues about something, and this app stores its data in a SharePoint list. If we just flick over to SharePoint for a moment, you can see here's the SharePoint list that I'm storing the records into, and those two records, the ID 10 and 11, you can see are reflected in our Power App in our gallery. Now, one of the screens that I've got here is a new issue screen. So in this new issue screen, we're going to be attaching files. Well, when a user fills out a new issue, we also want them to be able to attach something to it, maybe attach a picture or attach a PDF with more information about the issue. And in fact, with this solution, we're going to be able to attach multiple files to this record. So there might be a photograph of the issue. There also might be some supporting documentation to back up what this actual issue is. We've got this attachment control here, and you might remember in previous videos, I have shown you how to get this control onto your Power App. So the simplest way to get the file attachment control, because it isn't available on our toolbar, if we go here, if we try to insert this control, we find that it's just not available. So don't ask me why Microsoft don't give you direct access to this control, but there is a simple way to get this onto our Power App. All we need to do is drop down a form control, and in that form control, just need to connect that to our issues list, and we can see it populates the form, but we don't want any of this stuff. All we want is this little form file attachment control here. So I'm going to select that, and you can see I've got it selected because it's highlighted the actual control itself and not the data card. All I want is the control itself, and I just want to cut that out of there, and then I can select the whole form. So I can see I've got that form selected. I just hit the delete key and get rid of it, but now I can paste that control just directly into my Power App. See, we've got this little red indicator here because there's a few things broken we need to fix. If we just hit the little caret drop down and we go edit in formula bar, first thing we've got problem with the border color. Let's just make that black. Still have a problem with it. Its items are defaulting to parent default, so we just want to get rid of that. Still have a problem. What's the next one? The tooltip. Well, we don't need a tooltip, so let's just give that an empty string. And probably just one more problem. Okay, so the display mode is set to the parent display mode, but we want display mode edit. All right, so now we don't have the little red light, which is perfect. So let's just run the app quickly and we can take a look at that control. We can attach a file to there. We can hold control down and grab multiple. You can see here I've got a couple of images, but I've also got a couple of PDFs, and they will all attach to the control as well. Just one thing to note here, we've got a couple of key settings for this file attachment control that we can set, that we should consider, or you should be considering when you do add this control to your Power App. One of them is the max attachments. So this will allow you to set the maximum amount of attachments that are allowed on this control. The other setting you definitely want to take consideration of is the maximum attachment size. Now this is in megabytes, as you can see. The size by default is set to 10 megabytes, and I believe that it'll allow up to 50 megabytes per file size. Now, so the next thing we need to do is create our Power Automate that will receive those files from Power Apps. So let's jump into Power Automate and let's create a new flow, and we're going to just create a automated flow, and we'll just skip that for now. And the trigger, so here's our new Power flow, and the trigger is going to be a Power Apps flow. Now here's the key. This trigger we're going to use, we're not going to use the old trigger, we're going to use the new Power Apps V2 trigger. So in here, this is a little bit different, and the really great thing that we can do here now, we can define our inputs to that it's going to be receiving from Power Apps in our trigger. And you can see here, we've got a file trigger, so we can request a file from Power Apps. And this is the great sort of time saver, and that just simplifies this process so much that now we can just request a file directly from Power Apps. So the other thing that I do want to do is I want to get a number. Now this number is going to be the record ID of the SharePoint record that I'm saving. So my issue ID. So remember, in SharePoint, I've got my issues list, which I'm saving my issues records to, and they have a unique ID, which is just the default ID column from SharePoint. And I'm going to use that number to associate those file attachments in SharePoint with the specific record that I'm creating. So this is where we need to get the other number from Power Apps to our flow. So I'm just going to call this parent ID. Now nope, that's all I need there. So the next step I'm going to do after I've done that is I'm going to create a file, and I'm going to create the file in SharePoint. Now here we give it, the first parameter will be the actual URL, or the URL of the site where our document library lives. And if I go to my demo site, I've already created an issues document library. Now, the only thing I need here is another column. So I'll just add a new column here, and it's going to be a number column. And this is going to be called parent ID, and it's a number. Drag that to the front there. So this is where I'm going to be storing the ID of the issues list record against the against the attachment or the file that I'm uploading. That way I'm keeping my relationships and I'm knowing which files belong where. So that's my document library. If I go back to Flow and I click on the folder path here, so I've added the address of where that is, and the document library I called it was issue attachments. That's what I called it. Actually, let's do file content first, because file content's really easy. File content we're just getting directly from our trigger, and because remember we defined here our file contents we're getting from Power Apps. So under our file content, all we need to do is go get the file contents from our Power App. Now for our file name, we're also getting that from the trigger, the flow trigger, but we need to put in an expression here. And this is the expression that you're going to need. So it's this trigger body, open close bracket, square bracket file, square bracket name, and both file and name are in single quotes. This will get you the file name that we'll be sending from Power Apps. Okay, so that will create our file in our SharePoint library. The next thing we want to do is just update. We'll have to update our record here. So this is another SharePoint one. So we want to update update file properties. Again, we'll just select our same site address, and then under library, we want to select our issues attachments, and the unique ID will be the item ID that we get from our create file action. So the only other thing we want to set here is the parent ID, and we're getting parent ID from Power Apps. So we just do that. Now there's one final step here. So as you can see, this is a really simple workflow. The final step here is we just want to do another Power Apps step. And in here, we want to respond back to Power Apps Flow. We're not sending anything to it, but what this will allow us to do is to get Power Apps to wait for our response back. So, and you'll see that working in a minute and why we do that. All right, so that is our Power Automate or our flow finished. And I'm just going to call this save file to SharePoint. All right, we can see our flow there, save file to SharePoint. We go back to Power Apps. And in here, we just need to change our save function to loop through our file attachments and save them to SharePoint. Now, this is all we need to do here. There's no, as you can see, there's no sort of JSON encoding. There's no need to sort of extract the files out, and there's no need to sort of try to work out a way to send JSON records to Power Automate. We can just do all this in a very simple step, and I'm about to show you exactly how to do that. So under our Save button, at the moment, we've got just a patch, and then we're just doing some resets on those controls, and then we're navigating back to home. Now, oh, I can see here, just before we do that, let me quickly just rename this file attachments control to file attachments, so we know what we're dealing with there. And let's click on the Save button. And in here, we can see these are our functions. Well, this is what our Save button's currently doing. It's doing a patch, so we're just saving to our SharePoint list through our issues data connection. But one thing you can see I'm doing here that you may or may not know, patch actually, when we do patch a record to SharePoint, or we patch a record to any data source, patch actually returns back the record that we save. So all that data that we save to SharePoint, or we save to our data connection, we get a record back, and we can actually extract data from that record based on what we did. So when we're saving to SharePoint, for example, patch will return back the value of that record, so we can get that unique ID that SharePoint assigned to our record. We get that back to Power Apps. The only thing we need to do that is to enclose our patch in a set command. So this is what I'm doing here. I'm doing a set, and I'm setting a variable called recID to the result returned back from patch. Now, there's something a little bit extra down the bottom here. Like I said, patch returns a record. So patch will return all of that data for that particular record that we saved back to SharePoint. But all I want is the ID. I don't need the rest of it. And because I'm setting, I don't need to create a record and set a record here. I just need to set a variable. So I just want that ID value out of there. So all I need to do at the end of that patch is sorry, the end of it, yeah, the end of that patch is I just need to put a dot, and as you can see here, these are all the values that have been returned back from SharePoint for that record save, and in here I want the ID. Now what we need to do just after that is we need to call our flow. The real simple way is just to create a button and go over to, with the button highlighted, go over to Action and click Power Automate. And in here, it will give us a list of all the flows that are available to me. And we can see right at the bottom here is the flow we just created, which is Save File to SharePoint. So let's add that. Takes a couple of seconds. And we can see now we've got our save file to SharePoint action.run, and this is where we put our parameters in that we're going to be passing to our flow. Now, the key thing to look here is what order is, even though we may have put these in a certain order in flow, I noticed that it doesn't always, that's not always reflected in how flow is requiring those parameters. So it's always good to check this particular prompting here. And we can see here that the first thing it's looking for is a number and then the rest of the parameters. So I know in my case, I've got, let's just edit that again. I've got my parent ID and my file content. So in this circumstance, it's spot on, like it's got them in the right order. And it could just be that I hadn't refreshed my app in the past before where I've noticed that weird behavior. And in either case, I can see here, this is the order that it wants it in. It wants the number first, which is the parent ID, and then it wants the file contents. So this is exactly what we're going to supply it with. So all I need to do here is just copy that. So I can just right click copy, or I just grab that and hit Control C. So we don't need this button anymore. So let's just delete it. And in our save here, just after our patch, we want to do a for all, because what we want to do is we want to save all of these records to SharePoint. So we need to do a for all to traverse through the attachments control. And attachments control has a lot of similarities with the collection and also has a lot of similarities with the gallery. A lot of these functions like for all and sort of looping through them work in exactly the same way with this attachment control. So we can go for all, and we want to put the file attachments. Whoa. So we want to do for all file attachments dot. Let me just attachments. Oh, select attachments there. So we want file attachments dot attachments. Let me just put some space in here so we can see this correctly. And for each action, for each file attachment, we want to run our flow. So let me paste that out of, because remember I copied it out of that button, and we're pasting that. And remember the first thing it needs is this number. So we're getting this from this patch. All of these files are attached to this record. So we need this record ID. So the next parameter that we're passing to the flow is our actual file. So Power Automate expects a record at this point. So let me show you the format that it is expecting. So we need 2 curly brackets on either side. Let's just format this nicely so you can see this while I'm typing it. The value is file, and in here we want 2 properties. The first property will be content bytes, spelt exactly that way, and we want to pass it value. So value is the value from our file attachment control. The next property that it's expecting is name, and we can just give that name from our file attachment control. I'm missing a bracket at the end here. So, yep, and let's just format that text. So this is the statement we need to traverse each one of our documents in our file attachment control and save these to SharePoint. So this for all will pass each file one at a time to our Flow, and Flow will take care of our file saving. Let's take a look. Let's go over to our file issue attachments here. We can see there's no files in here. We'll just hit refresh and take a look. Yep, no files. And we've got let's go back to home anyway. And let's create a brand new record. Oh, I didn't reset that control there, but that's okay. Let's go back. Let's start again. Let's run. Okay, so we've got a new record. So let's just call this new issue. This is a new issue. Let's make this high priority and let's attach our files to our, and we're going to attach 4 files. And let's click save. All right, so we've created our new issue. And let's go over to our issues attachments. Click refresh. And we can see our 4 files have been saved to SharePoint. The next steps here would be create a form that we could open up an existing record and display those files and filter those files based on which issue we've got open. But because we are saving these attachments with our parent ID against them, we can easily filter those files into a gallery and just show links to those files based on what the parent ID is. So that's probably something you can have a go at yourself, and it might even be something I might do a follow-up video on if enough of you comment in the comments section and say, Chino, please do us a video and show us how to do that. If I get enough people doing that, I may actually go ahead and do another video, but I think that you guys could probably do that on your own. We'll see. Hi guys, it's me at the end to remind you to hit the like button if you like this video and to subscribe to stay up to date with all the latest content on this channel. I thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.